I'm Liz Harrison, and I'm hereby notified. Now, this is the 4:30 p.m. February 27th regular meeting of the Brattleboro Housing Partnership, being held on Zoom. And some of the folks are at Melrose, and some of us are online. So, welcome. And the very first thing I want to do is we have a brand new commissioner, and that's Michelle Wright. And I'd like for us to introduce ourselves quickly, just one or two sentences about ourselves, and then I want Michelle to say a little more lengthy, introduction about who she is and how she came to be a part of us. So, Gary, you want to start?
Sure, Gary Stroud, one of the commissioners, also on many other boards and committees for the town, longtime Brattleboro resident, involved in a lot of things, love being on the commission, helping out and getting involved and getting a lot of things accomplished in the town, moving forward, forging ahead, and looking for greater things this year.
Great, good. Pat?
Okay, I'm Pat Green. Hi, Michelle. Glad you're here with us now. I'm a fairly new commissioner, and I am a Brattleboro native, and I do live in Brattleboro housing.
Great. Alicia?
Hi, Michelle. I'm Alicia Underwood. I started as a commissioner when I used to work for BMH, so that's how I know you. And it's been 2 years being on the board. I now work for West River Valley Thrives. It's a prevention coalition in Townsend. And I have my mother lives in a housing site, and I grew up in a housing site. And so I am glad to be a part of this board.
Wonderful. Great. Michelle, please introduce yourself and tell us whatever you'd like us to know.
Okay, well, I'm really pleased to be here, and I thank everyone for the vote of confidence and the welcoming. I've received such a friendly welcome. I've lived in Brattleboro for 20 years now and raised my 5 children here. I'm a nurse now. My interests are in family life, in homelessness, in the social determinants of health, or the situations that people find themselves in, where they're born, and the things that we're just now, in the hospital side of things, or in nursing side of things, learning that we need to measure and really keep track of in order to make a difference. I have worked in care management at the hospital, which is essentially discharge planning and trying to make connections for people who need resources, and have been really pleased to work with the SASH for the last, 5 or more years. And now I'm working in the quality department at the hospital. So bringing quality improvement initiatives, learning how to think about things from a systems perspective, and setting goals and measuring our successes, as well as infection prevention there. So I can't say enough about the incredible work that's happening here, and I'm humbled, and I hope you'll teach me everything you know.
Well, we're just very glad to have you aboard. Yeah, thank you for reaching out to joining us. And, we've got a wonderful board representing so many areas of life, and that's just a healthy thing. I'm going to skip Christine and myself because all of you know us, and we've already, we spent time with each of you. Okay, on the agenda, on item 2, has everybody read the minutes from January 9th? And
Yes.
Do I have a motion? Anybody have any questions? If not, do I have a motion to accept the minutes?
I motion that we accept the minutes for January 9th, 2023.
Okay, do I have a second?
I second it.
Oh.
Great. Good. All right. Do we have any resident or citizen participation? I don't see any. Okay. Let's start with our staff reports. The annual report for the town of Brattleboro. I thought that was very well written. And so that's this report right here. And does anybody have any questions that came out of the information presented?
No.
Okay. If not, the executive director's report. Does anybody have any questions about Christine's report? Which is always full of so much work that she has accomplished and the whole organization has accomplished. And I'm so proud of you all.
Thanks.
Oh. Any questions about that report?
No,
Okay.
I don't.
Property review and property managers report. That's the blue one. Teal blue. I like the color.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I think it's always nice to have report of the vacancies and what's going on. And does anybody have any questions about the percentages or anything else? All right. The resident wellness and service report. First of all, the SASH Flash. And there's a number of SASH Flash things here. I am so impressed with what SASH is doing with all the folks and the activities and information and education. Like especially this macaroni and cheese, breaking it out for the nutritional value so you can see what you're eating. I think that's just wonderful education. Oh, anybody have any points they want to bring up or discussion?
I am glad that we have a new SASH coordinator that's going to be working with us at San Elliott.
Yeah, it's great news. Yeah, we're really excited to have him on board. And then he'll also work on the Bellows Falls panel, which is a new half panel, which is really exciting.
Received a notice call today. He'll be here. And I did meet him. He seems fun. I think they will enjoy him.
Yeah, he's really, he has a lot of fun and he's a nice guy and very smart.
Want to ask a quick question with that. Is there any way, I don't know if they have anything to add to that with, diabetic as well also, because I see a lot of stuff collating relating to not just nutrition, but calories and high blood pressure. Is there anything for like diabetic?
Yeah, the SASH program does. That is one of the markers that they work on. So they do diabetic education. There's a wellness nurse that can do education. They also do a lot of connecting people to resources in the community. The SASH coordinators are trained in a program called Managing Diabetes, which is a training that's been going on for years. I don't know if it's still part of the blueprint or not. It was for a while, and then I think that they sort of dropped some of them, but I know that they're using a lot of the same tools. And I find it to be really their biggest impact is really when someone has a new diagnosis or if their diabetes is not being managed well. That's when really the SASH nurse can make a big impact by connecting with them at their home to review, maybe do a med reconciliation, and then support them around connecting to their primary care physician or the person who's treating them specifically for the diabetes or maybe for nutritional counseling.
And I've seen.
I'm sorry. I did notice, and I did mention it to Shauna once, that a lot of the recipes that they put on here are not diabetic friendly, since I had a diabetic husband for so many years. And I said it would be nice if they had a few diabetic recipes that diabetics could use, because the recipes they give are very high in sugars. I did say something to Shauna about that.
Okay. That's a great suggestion.
It's a very good point, and I totally agree with you. Yeah.
And it also speaks about cancer awareness as well, too, right? Christine, okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they do a wide range of everything from, they do an annual assessment, which screens for everything from suicide prevention, depression, anxiety,
Right.
other physical, diagnoses, and then they try to focus on, every month has a different thing. So like Heart Healthy Month, they'll have certain things specifically for that. We do blood pressure clinics on an ongoing basis. So I think that they try to, I think they work with the state to see like what are the biggest needs. And right now I know that one of the biggest needs is isolation.
Right.
And then also nutrition, making sure that people have access to nutritional food. And another big screening is anxiety, depression, and suicide, unfortunately.
Right.
Yep.
Like mental health awareness, a lot of them are dealing with that now, as I noticed too. And I see that I was reading up on that also with HCRS. They're coming out with a big program to help people with that mental health awareness. Like you said, dealing with isolation, weather, family, loss of family in areas such as that, and going back to work. So that's a good thing also to promote, along with, Breast Cancer Awareness Month, other issues and other things that are coming up, which is great. So, yeah, I mean, I just like to see more diabetic because I'm diabetic myself. So, yeah.
Well, that's an important topic. It really is.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right. The Wellness and Services Monthly Board Report, the pink one. Does anybody have any questions about that? You've had a lot of activity and new hires. And they're doing a tremendous job here in servicing so many people with so many levels. Yeah. Yeah. I used to be on the community health team at Grace Cottage, and it looks like they've taken a lot of that piece and working that into helping, folks with all these ideas and stuff like that. So,
yeah, and I'll say the SASH for All program is really getting a lot of traction. I know I mentioned in my report that I testified in front of the legislature about the program and it's the potential expansion. They have been really, our SASH for All team has already signed up 23 participants. The goal for the year was anywhere between 25 and 60. And that doesn't include all the kids. So that's just the adults. And then all the kids are connected with them through that. So it's really, really impressive the amount of work that Jake and his team have done at this point to bring resources to that community, specifically because we really identified that they were the most underserved community that we serve.
absolutely. Does anybody have any questions about this report or any thoughts that we share? Okay. The HCD Administration Housing Choice Voucher Program Shelter Plus Care report. I got pages in order here. Okay, orange. Thank God you color code these things. Oh. Well, it's been an amazing process of learning how all of these programs work together to help people with their rent and all. And I'm just amazed at the work that's gone into it. And so does anybody have any questions about that report? Any discussion? Okay.
I think Gary, now we can't hear you, Gary. Sorry.
Gary, did you have a question?
Oh no.
The financial review, December 22nd comparable.
Okay, can you hear us?
Can you hear us
Yeah, we
now?
can now. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, the question I was asking, you mentioned About the Section 8, is someone going to be hired for that?
We had somebody, we offered someone the position, and today they declined because they want to work fully remotely. And so
Oh.
we're back to the drawing board. Unfortunately, we had narrowed it down to one candidate, and we really thought that they were the right person. And so it's pretty disappointing that we found that out today. So we had offered to be able to do a hybrid, but it really is a job that you need to be able to be in person, because we do inspections, and we have to serve people who don't have access to phones and computers and things like that. So they have to be able to be one-on-one. So that's pretty frustrating. However, David DeAngelis is still on leave. He is still working semi-remotely, and we're hopeful, that he could potentially come back at some point. We did hire someone specifically to complete this housing quality standard inspections for the Section 8 program. And so he started 2 weeks ago, and he did the formal HUD HQS training, and he's already begun in the community. So that's a big part of that position that we have covered. And then our occupancy team has been, managing the rest, which has really been a huge lift for them. It's a difficult role to hire for. The applicants that were most in line with what we do within that position really had a banking background. So having like compliancy around loan approval, understanding how to get the right documentation and how to do the certification and the estimates. It's a pretty complicated job, and it requires to be tested and to pass an exam. And so we were really looking for someone, if we couldn't find someone who already had that experience, then to look for someone specifically who had maybe who had been a loan officer, because it's a comparable, the skills are comparable.
Okay, I understand. This makes sense. And somebody who's already seasoned and might have worked in the capacity of with Section 8, like they do with the VSHA.
Yeah, we would love to, and we'll cross-train with them. We'd love to have somebody with that type of experience. There's not a lot of people in this area that have ever done that before. They probably work for us or Wyndham Windsor already. There's not a lot of people that do that certification in this area besides us. Yeah.
I gotcha. Okay.
But we have been trying, not that we want to poach someone from somewhere else, but we have definitely spread the word a lot. And we spread it all over New England. We put it on the national, in case somebody works in this field and wants to relocate to Vermont, we'd love to hire them to come here, and if they have that knowledge already, that would be wonderful.
Well, it'll happen eventually.
It will. And we've learned a lot in the process, and we've done a lot of cross training. So I think the silver lining of this is that we have a lot more staff who know a lot of the pieces than we did before, that all of that work was really held by one person specifically. And we were in the process of beginning to cross train when he went on leave. But I think this has really, forced us to do that. And that has been, I think, in the long run, will make this more sustainable no matter what.
Right. It'll happen. I have faith.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions about that topic? All right. Well, number 5, financial reviews, the December comparables. The white one. And
Now, which one was that, Liz? That was, again, we couldn't hear you. Oh, okay. I didn't hear you.
Yeah. It looks pretty standard to me. And Christine, do you have any general comments?
And the one comment I will say is that so if you look at the last pages, which are the tax credit properties, that's A.W. Richard, Red Clover Commons, and Red Clover Commons 2. That's their fiscal year end. So this goes through December 31st. So that is the fiscal year end for those properties. The other properties and our fiscal year end is in the end of March.
Right.
I think you'll see, if you looked at the property manager's report and you were able to really see the percentage of people behind on their rent, I think that will help to translate a little bit of what we're seeing in terms of the rental income, as one of our revenues that is lower than what we hoped. We do have 22 residents that are very seriously behind and facing termination for non-payment. And so those are big balances, unfortunately.
Mhm. So that being said, are they under that VRAP? I know that's wrapping up.
They've exhausted it.
Yeah, come March.
They've exhausted it. So they've
Oh.
used it all up.
Okay.
Yeah. And then now the reason it's a little bit helpful to get a notice of termination is then they can apply for other funds without that termination notice. It's really hard to apply for additional funds. So there are hot funds through SEVCA that they can apply for. And so we've been working with them in that process. Residents can always pay into the court. They can always pay us. They can always, they can always pay more. They can always, while we're in termination, if they show that they can pay or they continue to pay or they try to enter an agreement with the court to have a repayment agreement through the court, we will obviously, work with them, but they need to do something. The SASH for All coordinator has worked a lot with a lot of them and filling out some of these applications with SEVCA. But unfortunately, there are some households who haven't paid rent since prior to the pandemic. So the VRAP did cover them over those times, but now to be in that much of a deficit again is really hard. And I think it really does show how many of our households struggle to pay for rent, even though the rent is subsidized. 30% of a little is really a lot to people. And, it's really challenging to even pay that 30% even though it's such a deep subsidy. But as we don't have a choice as a federal agency, we have to collect rent. We can't not collect rent.
Right. It's not like it's a privatized.
Yeah.
When you're dealing with that, like you said, the other programs that are coming available, slowly, but there are a few be this and be that are cropping up and popping up from what I've understood. But something like that took so long. Was it addressed in the meantime about that, saying how this was the resources would be depleted by March, that they would understand?
Oh, yeah. So we gave a lot of information out. Anytime there was an update, anytime there was a change, we gave a lot of information to our residents. I think most of, our residents were aware that this was coming. We send lots of notices. We don't just file for a termination notice when you miss your rent once. We
Right.
wait sometimes. So it was definitely not quick. And I think our staff did an exceptional job. I mean, I don't remember the last number. I'd have to look. I mean, I feel like we received almost $600,000 in VRAP funds for back rent. So, the staff did a great job getting people signed up, working with them, getting the information to VRAP, making sure everything was on time. But at some point, we can't do it all. There's only, the resident has to participate on some level.
Right. And I agree. I mean, you're exhausted on both ends of your candle. You have to come to a consensus somewhere where, what's the next step? What's the next step? And I'm hoping they work with SASH, whatever.
Yeah. And I hope that they pay into the court. I think that would be the best way to go. Get a repayment agreement with the court, pay into the court. That's the best, option to do. We really can't administratively, we can't manage repayment agreements. They don't work. People tend to not pay them. And it's just too hard to try to track with people. So but they're always welcome to pay into the court.
Right.
It's really amazing to see these figures as to what housing has to pay for utilities. it's really amazing to see what they have to pay.
Mhm. Yeah, the subsidies are, I mean, we're really lucky that we offer such huge subsidies. So they are really, I think that having the ability to offer such big subsidies for our apartments is really helpful. And to be honest, 22 people, we house hundreds of people. We house 300 families in apartments. So 22 isn't a huge number. It's way more than we want, and we want to work with people. But most of the people in our housing do pay their rent.
Mm-hmm. And like you said, with that drop in the bucket, you don't want to have a rippling effect. I think, people are striving and trying to make ends meet, especially in these times. We don't know what the future holds. We're in charted waters and we're trying to navigate. Everyone's trying to make ends meet, be it changing jobs or careers or whatever. So having these programs and you helping and working with them does a lot. And
that is our goal. I would love, that is our goal. That's why we want all of these services in place, to really support our residents and create more housing retention. We really want to keep people housed. That's our main goal. That's our biggest, that's our biggest job in terms of homelessness in our community, is to keep people housed.
And you're doing a great job moving ahead, keeping the ones that are current to move ahead for others that are going to be looking, which is great. And that's what I love about, with BHP, working alongside.
Yes, Michelle?
I have a question about, I know COVID must have, sounds like this sort of the waiver, or I forget the terminology, but so that's unusual, of course. But have there been other times where there have been this many people in arrears, or is this really out of the ordinary?
I think this is the biggest. I think this is the most we've seen at once. I will say that I'm hopeful by next month that number goes down drastically, because I think some of those people will, figure out ways of paying off this debt. But I think, normally I would say we probably have maybe 10 people that have really big deficits, and a lot of it can be something, life, their car breaks down, or their kids are going back to school and they need clothes and they need things, or it could be a life event. They lose their job, and even though their rent goes down, they still need money for other things. So a lot of people in our community are just one crisis away from falling behind. And so, to answer your question, Michelle, no, I don't think we've ever been this far. I think so what we saw is we had about 30 people who really utilized VRAP, maybe more, and during that time they really were able to have their rent covered for the full amount of time. And so I think when that ended, even though people knew it was ended, I think there was a hope that it would be extended, or maybe maybe somebody else, there would be another program eventually. And so I think people just lost track and didn't, even though we kept saying the same thing. I think there was this hope that something else would come along. But I'm just guessing. I can't read people's minds.
And so just following up on that then, so, if maybe this hasn't been this big of a problem before, is there a systematic way that it's dealt with? I understand it sounds like, the case managers have done an incredible job of helping people navigate. And is it, sort of case by case, or is there, first this will happen and then on month 2 this will happen, something like that?
So there is a process. The legal process is pretty dictated in terms of, you get a notice, then you reply to the notice, then it's then it takes a while to file with the actual court. So people do have an amount of time, and usually when people get that notice, they usually react pretty quickly, because they recognize that as being very serious. It's not just like, oh, my rent is late. It's like, this is legally, this is starting the clock. And so usually before we file with the court, we usually get a response. And so we do have, the Wellness and Services team are aware of all the people who are in the arrears, and they do reach out to them and try to work with them. And there are agencies in the community who have funds to support, I think that they've never seen the amount of need. And it's not just from us, it's from Wyndham Windsor, it's from landlord people in the community. It's a lot of people in the rear. So I think, they're really prioritizing who is the closest to the eviction process to deal with first. And so we did meet with Sevka, the Wellness and Services team and property management met with Sevka last week to really address how to go forward with this. And I know that the meeting was pretty successful. And I think that they came up with some real tools of how to go forward. But some, unfortunately, if people get really behind, like maybe they owe, 6 months worth of rent, it's really hard for people to make up that difference. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's rough. I mean, it's real rough because like even they said before, and it's been said many times, this is just a patch for now. And, to find that sustainability long-term, it's another thing trying to find the fundings. I mean, some are there, some we're trying to figure out, but for people to stay afloat with the changing times and prices of things, like you said, life, like Christine said, life things happen and you're trying to, and the thing about with housing, they work with you.
Well, we're trying to also give people resources in the community to get access to food. We provide food programs on the sites. We provide, we bring, we partner with FoodWorks. We partner with Everyone Eats. We partner with the food bank. So we're trying to do that. We're trying to give people resources. So when their car breaks down, maybe they reach out to Sevka first about that, and then they pay their rent. Or so we try to always think about planning ahead. Christmas is coming up. How do you want to do? How do you want to proceed? Do you want are you going to fall behind on rent? And I think it's really hard. These are big choices for people, but rent sometimes can be the last thing that gets paid because it's not the immediate, you're not going to see immediate reaction. Like if your kids don't have new stuff for school, that's going to immediately happen. If your car breaks down, you're going to immediately need that. If you need food, you immediately need that. So the rent sometimes can fall behind, and I can understand why it does. And I have a lot of compassion. I don't think this is easy. These are hard answers.
I mean, because they're getting rid. Everyone Eats also is another program that's going to cease come March. So we're looking for other ways to plug in for resources and support, which is good.
Yep.
Looks like everybody's doing their best.
Absolutely.
So the January check listing. Does anybody have any questions?
The January check listing. Is that a purple one? Oh, that's this one. Okay. Gotta get my color going here.
Lavender, purple, whatever. All right. Check signing.
I have March.
Yeah. Didn't we already? I think we already said who was going to do when, right?
I had January.
And I've got February.
I forgot when was mine. I think was it
You're April.
Right. Thank you. Kickstarting the memory. So much going on. We got March Madness coming up, town rep. So
And I need to get Michelle signed up. So I'll work on that this month with the bank. So I'll be working with you, Michelle, and getting you added to the accounts.
Patricia, Pat, can you take May?
Yes, I'll just write it down, May. Okay. I will take May.
To get all this paperwork done because it takes a while to get all that in place.
Right.
Okay, so we're okay through May then.
Great. Thank you.
The A.W. Richards financial reimbursement from Evernorth. We found that page.
What's that, Liz? Sorry.
A&W, which do you know which form that is?
Oh, I think that wasn't a form. I was just going to review that with you very quickly. That was part of my report, was just that I met with Evernorth earlier in the month, and we are, I think I think when James was here, James is our accountant. When he was here, he talked a lot about A.W. Richard really owing us in terms of our management fees. And so we are in the process of working with them to recoup some of those funds, and to work with them on potentially, building new units in that building at that site potentially. Really the only way to get additional funding for that building, and that building is in dire need of lots of capital needs. We are going to need to add units to the property. So we began the process of talking with Evernorth about this. Evernorth is the owner of the property, so they own 99% of it and we own 1%. And so they really the property is on the top of their list to get some support. And we're in the process right now of recouping some of the money from them to give back to BHP, because we haven't been taking our management fees because the property is not cash flowing well. Hasn't ever cash flowed since it opened, unfortunately. So it's a really tight property. It's a unique situation. It's not a straight. So our other two tax credit properties have Section 8 vouchers embedded in them. And so it really makes for a more, the payment structure it's really easier to recoup those funds. Whereas this building, just because of the nature of the financial setup behind it, it just doesn't. When they created the performer, it just never really cash flowed. So we've been dealing with that since its inception. And when I inherited, or when I became the ED, that was on our top list of things to work on. But because the tax credits don't expire until 2025, we're really sort of having to wait a little bit. So I just wanted to make the board aware that, because it is such a big concern, that we are talking to Evernorth. We're trying to come up with a plan. We did get estimates for a new HVAC system, which will cost almost $800,000. So there's lots of need in that property for sure. The lovely thing about that property is it has 2 commercial spaces, which we could potentially convert into housing apartments. It also has a giant parking lot in the back, which is underutilized. So we could potentially build additional housing there, which would really be the way to work with this property. It would be hard to get the funds to rehab it without adding additional units. And we would need to add at least 6 units.
So are we going to, I guess Michelle hadn't had the chance to do the site visit.
No, not yet.
She would love that.
Yeah.
Just to see the next, go out there again. Well, we wait till the summer. We all have a little lemonade and he shows us around. And it was beautiful to see how everything is, works and gets put together and how it functions. In each location. So maybe, I don't know if that's something we could put on the agenda for the summer.
To do it again?
Yeah.
Okay, sure. If you guys want to do that again, that's up to you. I mean, just let me know. Happy to do it.
Like to see what plans they have for A&W and, get a better visual, because sometimes on-site gives you a better idea of how functionalities are.
Yeah.
Is good.
Super. Okay. Item 6, draft policy for grievance and appeals applicants. Has everybody read this?
That one is, I can't see. Hold on, what was that? That one.
The grievance, the draft.
Oh, the grievance, yes. Yeah.
So to give you a little bit of a background on this, we had edited the grievance policy a few months ago, and we put it in practice, and we realized when we did it, it didn't really work. We had moved from having informal hearings to having administrative reviews, and residents really are used to having an informal hearing. And so we found that we were just going straight to formal hearings, which was not our intention. So we've redrafted the grievance and appeal process for applicants and for residents. This is draft, so you review it this month. We will post it at our housing. If you have any comments or if you'd like any changes, you can let me know this month. We'll post it at our housing site. We'll give it to our resident advisory communication committee. We'll post it on our website. We'll put it up for public review for 30 days. And then next month, if that's when we'll take a vote to whether or not to approve it. So I just wanted to let you know about the process first. So I will now go into the changes. So there are, so the proposed changes would be that for applicants, instead of having a administrative review, which is what we put in the last, we will instead have an informal hearing. And what that is an informal hearing is an opportunity to have someone listen to the case to see if we are going to uphold the decision. And it's the informal review is held by someone who's not related to the case and is not someone who's supervised by someone who's related to the case. So if Courtney denies them as the occupancy manager, then someone who is her subordinate can't listen to the case. It would have to be someone who either is not a subordinate or is a supervisor of hers. And so primarily, most of the informal hearings are heard by me. We are trying to have more other people hear the informal hearings, potentially Lorelei, who's the director of wellness and services, specifically for the applicants, because she doesn't know the applicants. And so the informal process is really about sitting down, listening to the applicant, finding out, so many times it's because they owe a back landlord rent, or maybe they had, they were evicted for, some sort of behavior. And so it's really listening to them and then understanding what has happened since then. So did they pay the rent back? Did they participate in some sort of program? If they were arrested for something, did they participate in some sort of, restorative justice? And so it's really an opportunity for them to share that information. They could potentially go out and get more information. We might ask for things like, oh, you paid your rent. Can you give us some sort of certification that you paid it? Or, maybe it was a misunderstanding. And so that informal process really gives us that opportunity to sit one-on-one. And then if the informal process is resolved, then everything is all set. If it's not resolved, they can then request a formal hearing. And the formal hearing is by a hearing officer outside of the organization. So primarily we use Springfield Housing Authority and we trade. So I would listen to Springfield Housing Authority's hearings and they would listen to ours. But we're also looking for other people in the community, attorneys. We have a list of other people that we sometimes use for those formal hearings. We normally don't get to the formal hearing process. Normally it's resolved in the informal hearing, or people don't request a formal hearing because they know that it's something that they aren't able to change. And so our formal hearings are pretty rare for applicants. So that's what we'll be changing. So instead of having an administrative review, we'll have the informal hearing and just that the hearing officer is an external hearing officer for the formal review. Then for the resident participant, so if someone's a resident and they ask for an informal hearing, we only have one hearing. So once we have a hearing, we have a hearing officer listen to it. If the hearing officer upholds the decision, then we don't have a formal hearing. It just goes directly, they can go directly to court, and then the court can decide whether or not we go forward. Usually if somebody is, if we have a resident informal hearing, it's usually because someone is in the eviction process, usually for cause. So that means that they have done something in our property that warrants a termination notice. And many of those are overturned in the informal hearing, although sometimes they just can't be. Like if it's something like someone got arrested on our property because they hurt someone else on the property, then we don't have a lot of wiggle room in terms of what we can do. And then we have it go to the court and let the court decide at that point.
And that would be which court? That's family or not criminal, correct? If they were physically hurt, there would
Civil
be
court.
Civil, okay.
Because it's a civil eviction. We're not determining whether or not they hurt someone. That's a criminal situation. We are just determining whether or not they should be evicted because of their action.
Okay. Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay. Now, I guess my question is with this new just cause eviction thing coming into play, how's that going to work?
How's
I mean, it hasn't been decided yet, but just, getting a purview of which side it's going to, how that's going to work, if it's voted in, yay or nay?
That was my question too. I saw that mentioned, that it's on your radar.
So, so it's a great question. So just cause eviction. So the Brattleboro Housing Partnership already needs to have cause to evict someone.
Mhm.
We are already under those constraints. We already have that. So whether this passes or not, it doesn't change anything. We are already under those constraints. Landlords in the community, however, are not under those constraints.
Right.
So it would change for landlords in the community who serve our Section 8 participants. So it may make it harder to house people in the community because people might not want to take we work with a lot of local landlords who will really work with us to house people who might not have a perfect rental history. And many of the landlords are really good about working with a lot of our participants. What we've heard from landlords is because of this, they would be they might not house people up. They might not rent to people if they have these risks, if they're a high risk rental.
So they'd be more hesitant. Would that also apply with, I guess, in a sense, I call it tenure, you pass it on to the next person. So if that happens with a landlord, they say, well, we have somebody here that can't be housed. How does that work then if you have someone who's had difficulties, or they had issues with this individual? Is it like wash, rinse, repeat? If you know what I mean, does it come out?
I'm sorry. I don't know what your question is, Gary. Can you?
Well, if we have a landlord that's had issues with a tenant previously before, and they say, hey, we've had issues with this tenant because you're looking for a referral, and they go to you guys, and you already have in place with the same thing as far as with certain guidelines, as far as being, what it is a tenant, if they have issues like, in the past and they've had bad references, do you still take them as well also? Or how does that work? If this goes into place with landlords, say for instance,
so we have really strict rules in our admin plan of who we have to accept. We can't deny people. We have to give people the opportunity to rectify situations. If someone owes a landlord back rent, then they need to have that debt rectified before they move into our housing.
Right. So if there's a history of issues and problems like that, and you see it, okay, well, with the just cause eviction, if they say yay or nay, it applies to that individual. Next minute, the landlord comes and says, hey, you asked for, because you're going to ask for either a reference. Usually references that they pay the rent on time. They're not going to ask, well, how was this tenant? How were they there? So on and so forth. That being said, do you do an extensive background on that individual to see if they had issues with that former landlord, being it with drugs or whatever other issues that might have been? Now, how does that reflect on them getting that place? Would that still hinder them? Or would your process say, well, like you just said, under the benefit of the doubt, we give everyone that opportunity to go ahead?
To give housing for us to house them in our housing?
Right. If they have past history of issues.
Our administrative plan outlines that we have to do a criminal background check before we have to do a screening, we need to do a criminal background check. And we also have to we have to check to see if they have any rental history. And so people can be denied for housing based on those issues. However, they're allowed to have an informal hearing. A landlord in the community doesn't have to do that.
Even if they're a Section 8 landlord, the Section 8 they don't have to take another Section 8 person.
Okay.
They can decide if they want to take another Section 8 person. And many of the landlords in the community really have been wonderful to work with. They work really well with us in providing housing for Section 8 participants. And I really hope that continues. But they don't have to make that determination, and they don't have the same restraints that we do for just cause eviction. We cannot end a lease.
Right, because Section 8 has their rules, and it's pretty much similar to what you have here. But yeah, I guess the question I was asking, if that person had a history with the landlord, they all ask for references or referrals because you have to give that information out to find out how was that individual living there previously before we determine if this person is going to move into this in a safe, make this environment safe for the people that are currently there.
Mhm.
So that being said, how does that work, I guess?
You mean like,
Well, if a person has a background history, criminal, otherwise, next minute there is a landlord who owns their own home. Hey, I got a guy for you. And then you call for the references to the landlord.
oh, so I think so Gary, we have a really long list of people for our housing.
Okay.
So a person probably wouldn't be moving out of an apartment and then moving, they wouldn't be getting evicted and then moving right into our housing.
Okay.
People are on our wait list for several years. So by the time they apply for our housing, they fill out the initial application process. If there's something that comes up, like a red flag, they have some sort of criminal conviction, if they have some sort of drug trafficking conviction, sexual assault conviction, these things are really, those are issues that we then would deny their application for housing. And then they can have an appeal. And that's when we do the informal appeal process. So this process in terms of and I hope I'm getting this right, because I'm not entirely sure your question, but so the grievance process is really about our applicants coming into our housing and our residents. The just cause eviction, which is the other issue, doesn't affect Brattleboro housing because we already need a just cause to evict someone. In terms of landlords, the only thing that we are concerned about with the just cause eviction is we may have a harder time finding Section 8 landlords to rent to new Section 8 tenants.
Right. That makes sense.
And I think that the other concern by landlords are because the eviction process is so expensive. So you'll see that we had legal fees up to $25,000 last year at Red Clover Commons, specifically because we had one really difficult legal case. For a landlord in the community, they usually don't have $25,000 to formally evict someone. So a lot of landlords will just terminate the lease and say, I'm just not going to renew the lease because this tenant is really difficult to work with. Unfortunately, I haven't seen in my experience many landlords getting rid of Section 8 participants and raising the rent. Most of the landlords we work with really work with us. We had 2 cases at Westbrook where they increased the rent. One of them, they ended up staying and we worked with them and they actually are still living there. And the other one we rehoused with a landlord. So many of the landlords really do help us out and do work with us. I haven't seen a lot of landlords getting rid of Section 8 participants and raising the rent. Even new landlords who have bought places have been really happy to work with us. I think where the biggest concern is that sometimes a tenant who maybe is dealing drugs or maybe has other issues going on can be really disruptive to that building.
Right.
And it's really hard the formal eviction process can be really difficult for private landlords.
Yeah. And that was the big issue about that during the meetings at the select board. But yeah, that's good. That's a whole separate, like you explained to me, a whole separate thing dealing with private, versus you're dealing with state. So
I don't have an opinion on it. Brattleboro Housing, we don't have an opinion on it. This is just what the landlords are telling us, which I think is important for you to know because we use so many Section 8 vouchers in the community. So regardless of what happens regardless of what the people of Brattleboro decide, we'll deal with it either way. And hopefully most of our Section 8 landlords will just continue to work with us. We work really hard to build those relationships with them.
Right. I totally agree. Like I said, you already have your issue, your thing in place already. It's been in place for the longest. So this is just something that's new for just landlords only. So yeah, we'll see how that pans out during the town meeting.
Are there any other changes in the grievance appeals?
Are there any comments that you'd like to change on the form?
Just one more question, Christine. Hearings for non-citizens. Can you expand?
None of that was changed. That's just part of the policy, but none of that has been changed. That's exactly the same as it's always been. We didn't update that at all. We just included it in there because it's part of the same chapter.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Good. All right. We've just done both of those, haven't we?
Can't hear you well, Liz.
I'm just looking at the board agenda, you know, item 6A and B. Okay, one was for applicants and one was for residents. So we covered all the questions that I see here it is for the resident. Does anybody have any more questions about this document? Okay, great. Move on.
And so just so you know, it'll be posted as of tomorrow, and then it'll be voted on next month.
That sounds good.
What was that? I couldn't hear what Liz was saying. What's being voted? I couldn't hear you, Liz. I'm sorry.
So I just said that if there's no comments, then the grievance draft will be posted at our properties. It will be posted on our website, and it'll be reviewed by the attorney, and then it will be voted on next month. So it'll be posted for 30 days.
So we'll vote on this next month.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So projects in progress, Melrose Terrace flood mitigation survey in progress. Any comment on that?
So Gary had asked specifically to talk a little bit about, I don't know if Gary, you want to share any information about the VHIP program?
Didn't bring my glasses, but I'll try. I'll try to. Yeah, let me see. I might help. Look at those. Hey, wow. Oh, hey, I can see better. All right, this is a program that came up, Vermont Housing Improvement, VHIP. Because remember, there was VHIP, VRAP. There's a lot of V's. Vermont Housing Improvement, basically, the sum of grants $50,000 per unit for repairs needed to bring vacant rental units up to Vermont Rental Housing Health Code guidelines, and adding new units to existing buildings or create accessory dwelling unit on an owner-occupied property. Applicants review and project oversight is conducted through the regional home ownership centers listed below. There's a lot more to it if you go on the Vermont, I think it's VSHA or I think it was VSHA. Oh, Vermont.gov. You go on that, it explains to you about, if you look, I don't know if you guys have the back, if you flip it over. Landlords can apply for this, for grants that bring units up to rental housing health code guidelines, up to $30,000 for rehabilitation for 2 bedrooms, 50 for 3, 50,000 for new units, and accessory ADUs also. I am trying to get a little bit more information. I was going to talk to Brian Bannon about the zoning and other housing for ADUs also, because I went with Sue Fillion about that. I'm still trying to find out more. If anybody has any questions, I'll get that information. This is great. I guess maybe Christine could also give you a quick synopsis on that program, but if you go to the website, if anybody's interested, could look that up. And if you know any landlords, anybody in the area is interested in getting involved in that program, would be great. But yeah, Christine, I'll let you.
Yeah, so I did share it with the landlords, and I also shared so there's also funding for, one thing that I should have mentioned earlier, which I put in my summary, is that there is funds for a landlord rental, I'm sorry, I'm forgetting the term. Let me look at my report. The landlord relief program, which is an incentive to landlords where they can receive up to $5,000 for tenants who potentially either cause damage to the unit, also unpaid rents, legal costs. So I think that that's another piece of the just cause eviction, is that there is this new fund available to landlords, right, so that they can potentially receive funds if there are, if there are costs related to evicting someone or having to turn over an apartment. $5,000 is a great amount of money. Unfortunately, we're seeing damage up to $10,000 to $15,000 sometimes when people move out, but it is really helpful. So I wanted to point that out, that is a program that's starting. So we did share a lot of information with landlords about that program. And then also we did share information about the VIIP program. If landlords have units that they want to bring online, they want to add additional units, they can apply for those funds. I wasn't sure if you were interested in those funds specifically for Melrose Terrace and applying for that. It would help a little bit. I think that the costs are going to be really high. I think that so I do have a meeting scheduled with Brian Bannon and Sue Fillion for next week to talk a little bit more about Melrose Terrace and next steps as to if we, next steps, and to talk to them a little bit about where we are at and what we want to work on. But I just wanted to make sure that you're aware that unfortunately, there's no subsidies tied to these units. So we wouldn't be able to offer the deep subsidy that we have currently at our other properties if we were to rehab these units. They no longer have that public housing subsidy tied to them.
Right.
So it's really important for us to secure some sort of subsidy. That's going to be a big part of this process.
I did find a few others too, Chrissy, and I'll send it to your way and to Liz's also to look at. There was a bunch of stuff trickling down.
Yep.
That got approved through legislation. So
yeah,
that'll help us a lot.
Well, we definitely really want to rehab these, whether we rehab these or we create new construction here, but the subsidy will be really important to be able to offer, if we're going to offer affordable housing, we need to have the subsidy tied to it.
Be on the forefront.
Yeah.
Is there a deadline? I didn't know if there was a deadline to get this.
They are suggesting that you apply sooner than later. That's why we're meeting with the town that we can apply. We wouldn't necessarily, these are 1-bedroom units, so it would be the lower end. It wouldn't be the whole 50,000. It would be the 30,000.
Oh, okay.
But I think what I would really like to do is to bring in an architect to really give us an understanding of how much it would really cost at this point to rehab the whole property. And so that's what I'd like to talk about with the town. And then I think it'll be up to the board whether or not we want to rehab the existing units or we want to build a whole new we want to build a whole new building on the property.
Once we get the finances on that, that'll make a
so I think meeting with the town is a great next step. And then also putting out an RFP to hire a architect for, some initial drawings for the property. I mean, our RCC 2 building cost $13 million. So that puts it in perspective.
Well, the budget is coming, so
yeah.
We hope.
Wow. Great information. Good. So SASH for all.
I think we mostly covered it. Just wanted to give an update that it's still ongoing. We're applying for additional funding. We met with legislators to try to get it into the budget for next year and to get it expanded. Wyndham Windsor has applied for funding that we received for $50,000. So we put out an RFP to hire a consultant to do work around just managing, just pulling all the data together, qualitative and quantitative data. So we're in the process of doing that. I think having that data will make it easier to apply for additional funds if we don't get refunded through the state.
Good. All right. So Brattleboro Housing Opportunities, Inc.
I'll let Alicia take over.
So we meet on Fridays and at 9 a.m. Our next meeting is going to be March 10th. We are still in the process of reaching out to potential new board members. Right now it's just myself, Lorelei, Christine, and Jeanette White. And the main project that we've been discussing is the Ledgewood Heights Playground. And Jeanette's been writing grants for that, and been doing a great job with that. And so we have a list of names that we compiled at our last meeting, and we decided that we wanted to reach out to two specific people to see what additional names they have. And then write just like a brief bio, and then we can start prioritizing who we want to reach out to first out of that list of names. We're really looking for people who have a strong fundraising background or interest. It's a really, small, what's that word? Commitment, I guess. It's a small ask, for the amount of meetings that we have. But we are looking for someone who is passionate about fundraising and could help us with that process. And the one thing that we wanted to talk about is the email that was sent around today. There is a grant opportunity from the Vermont Community Foundation for the Sparks Connecting Communities grant. And last year we received $3,000 for the Ledgewood Heights playground. So we won't be applying for another one for that. But we have another potential project that I wanted to get your thoughts on. And it's to expand internet capability at the family sites. So this equipment would be purchased and used for residents as they work toward their SASH for All goals and their FSS goals. So we would be applying specifically to purchase those computers and the internet. Do you have anything else to add to that, Christine?
No, I think that's it. So just a reminder, and I apologize if you didn't see the email today. This came in pretty late, this request, and we need to put an application in pretty in the beginning of March before our next meeting. So the process of BHOI is its own nonprofit. And so the board had voted that even though if BHOI has a new initiative, they decide if they want to go forward with it, then they bring it to this board just to get approval to make sure that it aligns with the values of BHP and its residents. And so this process is what you guys had worked on a couple of months ago to make sure that we were aligning these values. So this is the first time we've had a proposal. It's not a huge change, but I think it will create a lot of change at the properties. I love the idea that they would have computers specifically for residents to use on the properties. I think that's something that we've wanted for a long time. So I think it really aligns with what we do and with our supportive services program. So thank you, Alicia.
It's a great proposal. Giving access, all this stuff to help everybody do what they need to do is that's excellent. We have the computers and everything else.
So I do think we'll need a motion to have BHOI go forward with this request.
So does anybody want to make a motion?
I would make a motion for that to go forward.
Okay.
Second.
Did you say second, Alicia?
Michelle did.
Michelle second.
No. All in favor? Raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Get those computers and laptops and everything that Wi-Fi or Wi-Fi, whatever it is going. Yeah, we need it.
Done.
Can I make a comment related to that, Alicia? I love the project. I feel like it's quite impactful for all the reasons that you mentioned, education opportunities in particular, and for adults and for children. I didn't know if there would be a place in there for education regarding internet safety. That might be something that's appropriate for children. Also on scams. People getting scammed, that kind of thing might fit right there. And another thought along the fundraising goal, I've seen in the past grants being written to pay for a paid fundraiser. Maybe someone who you'd hire for a year or so to sort of get the ball rolling, set up a plan. Something like that.
Great.
Very good. Thank you so much. Yes. Good.
Thank you.
All right. Any other discussion?
At some point with Goodwill, I'd like to have Christine, and I guess with you, meet with the CEO, because we're doing programs there and vouchers for people. Also, we're doing classes and stuff if people want to get back into the workforce and other stuff. So I would prefer rather Christine and Liz to meet with the CEO, Marion, at some point. I can give Christine her business card, because we're going to be starting that in the summer. And it's a free job skill thing, and people teaching them basics, getting back into the workforce. And like also with our vouchers, people who have needs for clothes or furniture and stuff like that, we can pass out vouchers and help out. So let me do that with Christine today and give her the card.
Okay. I think Lorelei Morissette, the Wellness and Services Director, would be a great person to be involved in that meeting, because she really oversees that whole wellness and services team. I'm happy to attend the meeting, but she would be the go-to contact, I think, for sure.
Oh, okay. Because this deals like with people getting back into the workforce. It's sort of like what Sevka was doing, giving out vouchers to people to get, for their needs or stuff like that. We give like vouchers out. We have it's a lot of great stuff that they're doing now, and they want to get involved in the community. So we want to do some goodwill.
Yeah, I'm happy to meet, but Lorelei, because she oversees she also oversees the education and employment coordinator, Matt Attesi, and she oversees SASH and SASH for All and all the resident service related programs. So she, I think, would be a great resource for them, because she really is more on the front lines in terms of making sure that people, are connected to services, for sure. But I'm happy to meet as well.
Oh, absolutely. Like I said, I'll grab both business cards and pass it along. Have your people call my people, we'll call each other's people, network and connect. It's all about connection, getting everyone going. I love it.
Sounds great.
Any other business? If not, may I have
I think Michelle did have a question earlier about how we meet. I think earlier she was saying how we...
I thought we were in person today, so sorry about that.
Well, we meet online December, January, February, and March due to the weather issues. So nobody's at risk for snow and canceling meetings and all the rest of it. In April through November, we will meet at the sites, the property sites.
Okay, you're counting on good weather in April.
We're fingers crossed.
Got it.
And we can certainly, if things are iffy, we can. I'm sure Christine can do a what do you call it? What I'm looking for, where you have someone online and some in present.
Oh, Zoom.
Yeah, we might be able to do hybrid. Yeah, we could do that.
Yeah.
And luckily, the April meeting they're pretty late in the month, so we're almost in May. But yes, you're right, Michelle. We could have a blizzard, so you never know.
So we can do a hybrid if we need to, and whatever.
And a lot of us are recuperating after town rep meeting, so give us a little.
And we'll just have to make sure. I think you all have the schedule, but I'll make sure Michelle gets a copy of the schedule as well, because it lists the housing sites, and we'll go over that when we visit them too. I'll show you where to go and where the community rooms are and where the meetings are held.
All right, I'll try again. Any motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
I will second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you for your attention. It's a marvelous discussion. We've covered a lot of material, and we just are so appreciative of you, Michelle, joining us. And we're going to move forward.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I want to say just how appreciative I am that everybody does such a great job looking through the packets, and you have such great questions. So thank you so much. It really shows that you did your homework. So I appreciate that. Thank you. I know it's a lot of material.
Everybody gets a star.
A little emoji.
Yeah. We'll see you then in March.
March.
That's good.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right, guys, have a good one.